instead of trying to like break out directly west, he decided to turn back east and then go north along the river. And he found a ford. He crossed it, and then pretty much like he literally just like fought his way back. And apparently, like the story, there's a nice painting which shows, of course, probably drama. I'm not sure how dramatized it is, because like pretty much the story is that like he was literally, like he wasn't riding a, or maybe he was riding a horse, but he was literally involved, like rallying troops, urging them forward, picking up a musket to fight off Cossacks. Like, think about servant leadership and those BS versus those good old management terms like Marshal Ney, I think. So that was a horrible connection to make between a management consulting versus one of Napoleon's, I think, probably certainly my favorite marshal. Just for stuff like that. And then he made it back. Yeah, I think like you kind of tell from Napoleon's reaction when they found out, when Marshal Ney finally made it in, that like they thought he was left for dead or not going to make it, and he did. I feel like the entire retreat was incredible. Like his rear guard was consistently behind. So when they made it back, I think like was it Smolensk or Vitebsk, all of the supplies from the main army that were supposed to be left were taken. I just think that story is incredible for Marshal Ney. Of course, Marshal Ney, probably the black spot was Marshal Ney convinced or advocated for Napoleon to abdicate. I can't hit away at too much because other generals did it. And it's not like Marshal Ney became a staunch royalist. I think that's the cool thing about some of the marshals, like Massena had a regular upbringing, Murat, regular upbringing. I think it's cool. Again, certainly it's just like why I'm certainly it's always very strange if people have an unfavorable opinion of the French Revolution. To which I always quote that Mark Twain Two Reign of Terrors, which is a great passage. I highly encourage you to read it. I think anybody who has any reactionary tendencies should instantly be shut up by Mark Twain's Two Reign of Terror quotes. Yeah, so I'm going to double back. Well, it's been an hour, 50 minutes. So I'm going to double back now. So we'll see how long the battery lasts. And it's going to be much less scenic, just walking along a busy main road. I don't know, I suppose there is some value. The same way there's value in seeing the random parts of the Bronx. But so Marshal Ney, yes, so in general, I hold against Napoleon's marshals the guys who betrayed him or abandoned him. And then secondarily, the guys who became royalists and pro-Bourbon. And so I hold that against various folks, various marshals. And so Marshal Ney was neither. So of course, like the Bourbons allowed him to retain his office. But apparently, there's a story where I think a pretty badass story. Where apparently, one of the restored king's daughters was belittling his wife. I think it was somewhat related to Napoleon. I think they were like a step relationship of some sort. And so Napoleon had there was the great line of, "You were sipping tea," and so the Bourbon daughter belittled his wife into tears, and so then they had the badass line of, "You were sipping tea in England," but always like I and others were fighting for France, while you were sipping tea in England. Which again, I think kind of does show like just how incredibly strange it was. The Napoleonic setup was. Or again, like France was literally getting jumped on all sides. And then secondarily, the end result is to restore a monarchy. He was just chilling in England. Like, yeah, if I was a fighting man, that would too infuriate me. That was a great line. And of course, and the other cool thing about Ney, I suppose it does show some irony in terms of why. Okay, so pretty much Napoleon came back, and so Marshal Ney was deployed to. That's such a nerd thing. That's disparaging. But Marshal Ney was sent to. You gotta go like, oh, bring Napoleon back in chains. And then, of course, join Napoleon for his 100 Days campaign. I assume this is the right street to make it back. I'd assume. Alright, 10% battery. I'll stop it when we get to 5. But we'll finish off with Marshal Ney. And any concluding thoughts about Napoleonic marshals. So again, just thinking about the statues that got me on this train of thought. But yeah, so Marshal Ney joined Napoleon. And then, of course, Napoleon's defeated. Again, Marshal Ney is probably to some degree. Well, Marshal Ney was certainly involved in the fighting. Yeah, like leading a charge, leading multiple charges. But yeah, and then of course, so who knows? Again, like that story of what he said to the king's daughter, right? Like I don't think you can hold that against the reasoning for someone to get scapegoated. And so of course you can make it does make sense. It says you have to make an example of somebody if you are the Bourbons, but you can't help but imagine that there was some bias in terms of why Napoleon or why Marshal Ney was singled out as the fall guy. Yeah. And so pretty much it was also a fiasco where like the generals didn't want to condemn Marshal Ney. And so the Bourbons had to kick it to a civilian council. There's no, anyway, so they found 5 marshals to condemn Marshal Ney at some point. And so all of those 5 marshals instantly on my shit list. I think like MacDonald was one of them. Serurier, that one was a bit painful. I was always considered Serurier to be I think he was involved since Napoleon's Italian campaigns. So that's 5 marshals, and then Napoleon, of course, was shot. Or Ney was executed, and of course he had like his pretty badass last line of aim for a heart. This will be my last command to you. This again, I think, pretty badass. I think Marshal Ney, just for being that involved and hands-on, I always respect that. And then secondarily, loyal to Napoleon. I think this is a true legend. And I'm not just saying that as like I respect martial feats as my criteria, because I don't necessarily. I'm not a Murat fanboy. I certainly like Murat as a character. Although I do think, yeah, Murat's betrayal of Napoleon, I do find a bit distasteful. because Mira was a flamboyant cavalry commander. I think very much like what you would call a Chad, with his womanizing, and like apparently he got like shot in the jaw, and then he had like a pretty charming line about like, my passion has not diminished despite his potential wound. John knows. Pretty good line. But yeah, so very much he got made king. He got made king of the kingdom of Naples. And yes, pretty much he did some shenanigans where he betrayed Napoleon to try to keep the crown. But then he realized that the coalition wasn't gonna let the son of a cobbler remain king. So then he flip-flopped again when Napoleon refused to see him. And then he tried to save his kingdom. So I think he could have just chilled out in France, probably like either have a Marshal Ney situation, and probably like he was probably looked upon less favorably than the other marshals. So maybe he wouldn't. It would have been easier for him to get court-martialed. I feel kind of hungry. I forget if milkshakes are lunch menu or any menu. We forget. But as a side, it's a shame what happened. There's always like to go to like what happened to McDonald's stories. But yeah. So that's interesting stories. Yeah, I think it is an option, but let's see if there's a bathroom here. Whereas